Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. This session is part of the Passive House and All Electric Homes Training and Workforce Development Initiative brought to you by the sponsors of MassSave. MassSave is a collaborative of Massachusetts electric and natural gas utilities and energy efficiency service providers, also known as the sponsors, helping residents, businesses, and communities of the Commonwealth save energy and money by improving the energy efficiency of our buildings. As part of this training initiative, the sponsors offer a 50% cost reimbursement for individuals pursuing professional accreditations for either Passive House or Energy Star. Once you have successfully completed your certification course, you can fill out the reimbursement application found on our website and submit it to us for incentive processing. The sponsors of MassSave also offer robust incentives to homeowners, builders, and developers who incorporate energy efficiency upgrades into their design and build high-performance all-electric homes. To qualify, single-family homes or buildings with 1 to 4 units must have heat pumps for space conditioning and electric appliances for water heating, cooking, and clothes drying. Homes can qualify for incentives through one of 3 eligible performance tiers, which include a base tier for homes that exceed the building code, as well as tiers for Energy Star, Next Gen, and Passive House certification. Incentives start at $7,500 a home and also feature innovative market transformation adders, which are designed to encourage participants to pursue additional national certifications for their homes and to incorporate emerging equipment technology to drive higher building performance and enhance occupant comfort. For multifamily buildings, the performance tiers and incentive structure is similar to that of single family, with the biggest difference being that multifamily buildings are allowed to have fossil fuel domestic hot water heating equipment while remaining eligible for incentives. Please note that the program defines low-rise buildings as having 3 stories or less, while high-rise buildings have 4 stories or more, or any multifamily building with centrally metered utilities for tenants. There are some slight differences in the per unit incentives for low-rise versus high-rise buildings, as you'll see in the chart on the screen. And lastly, there are some additional market transformation adders for multifamily buildings, including more options for heat pump water heating equipment, as well as incentives for whole building air infiltration testing. If you have any questions about these incentives, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at the email addresses shown on the slide.
Diving right into today's great presenters. First, we have Megan McDonough. She has been the Executive Director of Pioneer Valley Habitat for Humanity since 2014. Megan has been working with Habitat to refine the model of small ecological homeownership, asking the question, what's big enough to contain the dream of homeownership? Prior to her work with Habitat, Megan spent 7 years at the Center for Ecotechnology, providing support for green building certification programs like LEED for Homes and Energy Star Homes. She has a master's degree in regional planning from UMass Amherst. Next, we have Walt Kohler. Walt is a volunteer who has been building homes with Pioneer Valley Habitat for Humanity for 17 years. He got involved with Pioneer Valley Habitat on the construction site when he retired from the tech industry and has helped to build more than 20 homes. Over the years, he has increased his depth of knowledge in building knowledge and applied his project management skills as a volunteer build team leader, doing planning and project management for Pioneer Valley Habitat construction projects. Last but not least, we have Jamie Callan. He is the owner of Riverbend Design LLC, and he is a certified HERS rater since 2013. Jamie's background as a carpenter and general contractor led him into the building performance field and sparked an interest in high performance homes. Through many years of participation on building projects as a contractor, rater, and consultant, Jamie has developed a focus on making high performance building practical for all tradespeople with commonly available materials. With that, I'm going to hand things over to our presenters and start the webinar.
Well, thank you for having us here today. We're really excited to talk about our homes that we've been building in Western Massachusetts. And let's just jump right in with the first slide. So Pioneer Valley Habitat for Humanity builds homes for low-income families in Western Massachusetts and sells them with an affordable mortgage. And we have been focusing on building simple, energy-efficient homes for a long time now. And we would describe sort of our baseline house before the current MassSave incentive program as being a 600 to 1200 square foot house, 1 to 3 bedrooms. We almost always do slab on grade. We have been using, probably for almost 10 years, a wall assembly most of the time with a 2x6 wall with dense packed cellulose, plus 2 inches of exterior rigid foam for continuous insulation. That's our sort of standard wall assembly. We focus on simple layouts to reduce energy use. When you build a box, it's easier to insulate, easier to build, easier to air seal. We have been putting in ductless mini splits for a number of years with 1 to 2 heads per house. But we were still using mostly electric resistance hot water heaters, tank hot water heaters, occasionally on demand, and still meeting ASHRAE 622, but using exhaust only ventilation for many of our homes in the 5 to 10 years ago range. So that's sort of the baseline house our affiliate was starting with when we looked to see what it would take to get the all-electric incentives that Derek mentioned at the beginning of this webinar. So if you go to the next slide, when we decided to try and get to this level 2 incentive, that $25,000 for a single family house for going all electric, some of the general requirements we were already aligned with. We were already doing mostly all electric homes. We don't have natural gas availability in Western Mass, so all electric makes a lot of sense. But some of the challenges we have faced are around the overall building air tightness, getting our ACH 50 number on the blower door test down to less than 1 is definitely a challenge. And we also have to get the overall HERS rating for the house to be less than 35 without the addition of PV. So that means looking at the overall efficiency of the house as a system, and that meant us going to heat pump water heaters. It was really a necessary step for us to get that overall efficiency of the house. But since we're building slab on grade houses, finding a location for that heat pump water heater is a little bit more difficult. Typically, you throw it in a basement, no problem, but we didn't have a basement in these houses. Next slide. This is a little bit of a history of houses we've been building in the last few years. And you can see the rows in green, these houses are ranging from 600 and something square feet to about 1,400 square feet. Our HERS ratings without PV, I think were pretty impressive, 51 at the highest and down to 34. With PV added, we got as low as a -19. And these are some great numbers, but trying to get to that HERS 35, you can see we only did it on a couple of these houses. And the one highlighted in blue is the house we're going to talk about the most today, this house we built in Conway. We were able to hit that overall HERS target, as well as the ACH 50, which is that measure of building air tightness that they do with the blower door. We got that one down to a 0.95 when the program for level 2 requires a 1 ACH 50 or lower for that highest incentive. And we didn't quite make it with our other houses. We were trying in 2023 with those 3 houses we did in Northampton to make the incentive. We did make it to the $15,000 level 1 incentive with one of the homes that got under a 1.5 ACH 50, but we didn't quite get there with the others. Next slide. So I think I'm going to turn it over now to you, Walt, here to talk a little bit about the house we built in Conway and where we went from here.
Okay, thank you, Megan. So the house shown on the right in a rendering is a 2-story, 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath house, slab on grade. Our goals were energy efficiency, healthy indoor environment, low maintenance, and simple to build. As Pioneer Valley Habitat, we do most of the building with volunteers, some of whom are skilled, some of whom are not too skilled, but learning skills. And of course, we have to engage with professionals for the site work, for the foundations, for the plumbing and things like that. But most of it is done, most of the real building and the challenges to get to the ACH 50 under one are up to the volunteers. The next slide, please. So here I say are the keys to reaching level 2. It's the insulation, and so as Megan said, we've been building 2x6 walls with exterior insulation or dense packed cellulose on the interior and 2 inches of XPS on the exterior. This shows a picture on the right of our house with the rigid foam on the exterior and zip taped the joints and zip taped around the windows. That's basically our vapor barrier, our for the water and vapor. Air sealing is real critical to get to level 2, and I'm going to go into some detail on that. But again, to reach level 2, we had to have an efficient heat pump, hot water heating, efficient mini split for cooling. We found that in order to reach the air sealing requirement, it was very critical to do a pre-insulation blower door test analysis so we could figure out what additional things were needed to get down to under 1. We required the balanced ventilation. And we did this on this particular house. Without PV, we got down to -35, and with PV down to under 17, -17, and we got down our ACH 50 as 0.95. The next slide, please. We're going to go into a little more detail about the air sealing components. So again, it's a slab on grade. We use a 6 mil poly under the slab for the vapor barrier. We build the 2x6 walls with a PT base plate, and we still sealed the PT to the and also caulk it to the base plate. We have OSB sheathing on the house, not zip sheathing. This case was a little less expensive. We caulk all the OSB sheathing joints to the framing. As a backup, we also zip tape the OSB sheathing seams, and we zip tape the sheathing around the windows and the door rough openings. When we put the windows in, we foam seal the windows and doors to the rough openings. The picture on the right shows a volunteer doing the foam air sealing of the windows to the openings. We have the joint between the air sealing is going to be the sheathing, and also the ceiling wall of our 2nd-story house is the ceiling is the air barrier. So we put a plywood wall cap on the top plate, and then we caulk the ceiling drywall to that cap. I'll show you in a little more detail in the next slide. We do a lot of caulking, a lot of air sealing. So here's actually actually go back one more slide. I wanted to mention something. The final on the bottom there are lots of openings in the sheathing and in the ceiling. There are pipes, there are vents, there are wiring boxes. These all have to be very carefully foam sealed around the peripheries in order to make sure that that's not a major leak for the air. On the next slide. Okay, here is a wall section of the bottom of the house. Basically, at the very bottom, you see the foundation where we put 2 inches of XPS foam down below, and on top of that foam, we put a vapor barrier, and then the slab goes on top of the vapor barrier. That vapor barrier extends out beyond the foundation, out of the wall. And on top of that vapor barrier, basically we put the foam seal and caulk, and then put a PT base plate down on top of that to make that's air seal. And then the yellow line going up shows the sheathing, and that's the air barrier to the house. That sheathing there is the air barrier. And all points where we interface with the framing, we put basically row of caulk there. The insulation in the house, I said earlier, we have a dense packed cellulose on the interior and 2-inch of XPS on the exterior. We get an R value of 30 doing it that way. Let's go to the next slide. The next slide shows what happens at the top of the house, where we have to go from the transition of the exterior sheething as the air barrier to our ceiling drywall as the air barrier. So all the little blue dots show where we apply caulk in order to seal the sheathing to the framing, and also to seal the interior drywall to this plywood top plate that we put on top of the two framing top plates. So we use a lot of redundancy in terms of how to seal things up. We find the redundancy is important because we don't have professionals doing all of the work. We have volunteers, and sometimes they're very sensitive in terms of applying things, and sometimes they're not quite as good as we'd like. So we end up having to do redundancy. In addition to the caulk, we found that after we did a blower door test, we were having air leakage at the joint between the top drywall and that base plate, plywood base plate coming out of the wall. So we would actually went around and we put a row of expanding foam at that joint. Again, we use belts and suspenders here often in order to get the final result that we're looking for. Why don't we go on to the next slide? In terms of the other energy efficiency and also for air quality, we've used the Brand ERV system to basically take out stale air and bring in fresh air. We take stale air out of the bathrooms, and one of the pictures on the lower left there shows the unit in one of the bathrooms. The other picture of the exterior of the house shows the exterior intake and exhaust that we use for that Brand system. Finding a place to actually put this ERV system is also a challenge in a small house, and we have placed it over the stairway going up the stairs. We'll show a picture of the layout in one of the next slides. On the right-hand side, it shows the Mitsubishi mini splits, one of the heads that we have, and the double units on the outside. We have one Mitsubishi unit head on the downstairs and one upstairs. Go on to the next slide. As Megan was saying earlier, finding a challenge as to where to put the heat pump hot water heater. This shows the heat pump hot water heater located inside of a closet under the stairway. And this is a Rheem heat pump hot water heater. I think it's got an efficiency of 3.8. The challenge is to get air into it. So you see we have a louver door on the right. We also have some louvers that go into the adjacent closet. Why don't we go to the next slide? Here's a basic layout of the house. It's 24 by 28. This is the first floor. So we have an accessible laundry and bath unit. And then you see the stairway in the little yellow mark there shows a DHW. It's where we put the hot water heater. And that door labeled D2 is actually the louver door, where we can then get air to come into and exhaust into the adjacent entryway. On the left-hand side of the house, there's a marker that says the air source heat pump wall-mounted unit above. So that's where we put the interior head that's going to heat and cool the whole first floor of the house. Let's go to the next slide. This is the second floor. It shows 3 bedrooms and a bathroom and a central hallway. The key on this slide is we put the other head for our heating cooling system outside of the bathroom. there's a little arrow there. Unfortunately, we didn't highlight it. There we go with the pointer. That's where basically where the head is, and that heats and cools the second floor. As Megan will discuss in a little later, it's a challenge to get air distribution to all of the rooms, basically. But we found that given good insulation, and if the homeowners will at least keep their doors open most of the time, the variation at least seems to be reasonable, even if we don't have actual ducting going into the individual units. Next slide. Okay, this is time for Jamie to take over.
Hi, Walt. Thank you. Let's see. So mine's gonna be small here, but I think there's a few points which have already been touched on that I just want to reinforce, and one is the redundancy that is pretty much required, I think, when we're talking about air sealing details, especially for new or inexperienced builders. And with the habitat projects, they have a rotating crew of volunteers, so you never really know who's going to be in charge. So that redundancy really was critical in their detailing. And then also having somebody, in this case, Walt really has taken the lead on several projects where he's been in charge of those details, and he's met me on site every time we do a blower door test. And in this project, we did 3 tests. One was at the pre-installation. So framing was complete, windows and doors were installed, and they had installed drywall on the second floor ceiling below the attic. And so we were able to, the air barrier was complete. And at that point, we were a little over. We weren't quite meeting the 1 ACH. I think we were at about 1.3 ACH 50. And it's a little worrisome then, because we're talking about really small details. I mean, it's not like there was any big gushing leak, very minor leaks around the drywall lid on the second floor. And then the other thing that I think really is a weak point on these homes is the double hung windows, and there's not a lot, you can't really do anything about that. So the second blower door test was at the post installation. They did dense packed cellulose in the exterior walls, and we did another test before the drywall is installed. And at that point, we were right about on target, but just a point or just a note that these were single point tests. And then at the final, we did a multi-point test for the official rating. So at that phase, we were still a little uneasy because we were so close to the threshold. And the final results and the midpoint results were very comparable, essentially the same. And so that really showed that that final drywall was not really, the air barrier was really complete prior to that. But in some cases, people are really counting on every level to contribute to their 1 ACH. And this is also a relatively small volume of house. I mean, we're just under 11,000 cubic feet. So challenging in the spectrum of houses that we test. I guess one thing I just want to mention that I really like about these houses is that there's nothing really exotic about the materials or the construction methods going in. This is a production style house that anybody could build, and the materials could be obtained, by any common supplier. And so I think it's a great model for people moving forward and trying to adopt this level of building. Yeah, that was it. I think I just, a note about that the air sealing stuff is that those weak points really just were the drywall sealing and the windows. Those are the things that we noticed. They did a great job sealing up the exterior sheathing, and that redundancy of caulk and zip tape, and even little spots of spray foam, and then additionally, the cellulose insulation does help kind of kick in a little bit extra. But that drywall detail is tricky on the ceiling, even with all the redundancy that they have. And then I guess the other point is that it's difficult to hit a HERS index score of 35. And so the fact that they were able to do this, and they just made it, let's be clear, this was not like a home run. It was a little stressful. There's a lot of back and forth about equipment choices. And that blower door test, we really didn't hit our target until closer to the end. So it's challenging, but this is a great example of achieving it without really exotic methods or materials. So good job, you guys. We can pass it on to the next slide.
Thanks, Jamie. We definitely needed your advice to get to those scores, so we appreciate that. So at Pioneer Valley Habitat for Humanity, like I said, we build homes with volunteer labor and then we sell them to low-income families. We have done some follow-up surveys with those homeowners to ask them about their satisfaction living in the homes. We did one in 2021 of our homeowners looking specifically at their mini splits, their satisfaction with those. And then we did another survey this past year where in collaboration with other Habitat for Humanity affiliates building all electric homes in Massachusetts. So let's go to the next slide and I can share some of what we've learned from those surveys. So Pioneer Valley Habitat, we've been doing ductless mini splits with just the 1 or 2 heads, depending on the layout of the house and how many square footage and whether it's 1 or 2 stories. And so one of the questions we asked, are you able to heat your home to the temperature desired? Are you able to cool it as desired? And we correlated that with the set temps that they self-reported. This is obviously, if you look at the scale here, these are not a huge number of survey responses. So not a scientific survey, but useful data. There were 2 people who said they were not able to, were rarely or never able to heat their home as desired. One of them was the person who was trying to hit a higher set point above 73, 74 degrees. And so, that certainly raised some questions for us. On the cooling side, the distribution seemed adequate. And there was only one person who some of the time wasn't able to cool sufficiently with those single mini split heads, the 1 or 2. Next slide. And if you take a big step back, the overall satisfaction with heat distribution, not just temperature, is that about 2/3 were very satisfied or somewhat satisfied. And then there was this about a third of the people who said they were somewhat unsatisfied or very unsatisfied with the heating distribution when we did these mini splits with just the ductless mini splits. But despite that, most respondents said that they don't use any additional source of heat. And overall, the responses were more favorable towards cooling to be able to meet the desired temperatures. Next slide. So the other question we were asking is, this dream of a zero net energy house, I think makes people think I won't have any electric bill. And in some cases that's true. We definitely have homeowners who are turning back the clock with their solar and the meters running backwards. But we also have homeowners who have electric bills. In the chart, you see the green are people who have solar and the orange are people who live in all electric homes without solar. So some obvious correlations, the higher bills tend to be with people who do not have solar, which is what we would expect. But there are still some people who have some solar panels, this doesn't say how many, that are still ending up spending over $900 a year on their electric bills. So I think it's important that we set expectations about what it means to live in an all-electric home. Sometimes the fact that it's more than their last electric bill might be a surprise because they have all these energy efficiency, but they might not be also comparing their heating bill. So once you put your heating, your lights and appliances all onto one bill, you've got to make the comparison to that. The majority did say that their energy bills were manageable or very manageable at 81%. We asked them about, are you on a budget plan with the utility company? Did you learn about your estimates for how much energy you would use? Do you enroll in the lower cost electricity program that's out there for low income families? So we wanted to find out if people are aware of some of those resources from the utility company and how, education might prepare them for what to expect with living in an all electric home. Next slide. One of the things that can be really hard is when someone moves into a house. So with that, because a house's solar panels generate more in the summertime when the days are longer, the sun is up higher in the sky. This yellow line on the chart shows the solar production, and those are the summer months in the middle, and then it goes down significantly in December and January. And then the blue line is electric kilowatt hour usage, a modeled usage. And you can see that the expectation is that they're going to use a lot more electricity in those winter months when they're not generating as much solar. So if you move into a house in, say, the fall, in October, November, while your solar generation is plummeting and your usage is going up for the winter, you won't have banked that solar energy from the summer for your net metering credits. So that can be especially difficult that very first year to not have as much solar energy banked for the electric bill. All about setting expectations. Next slide. So, if we think about what are our overall lessons learned from these projects, working with our HERS rater to do a pre-installation blower door test was really critical to being able to know if we were on target for our air sealing. Putting up continuous sealing sheetrock before the interior framing is one of the things we did to make sure that that envelope was really complete, and also so that we could do that pre-installation blower door test. Foam sealing all the electrical and plumbing penetrations, just that attention to detail and that redundancy that Jamie and Walt both talked about. And those all kind of have to do with that air sealing number, which was one of the challenges. Next slide. Also, our challenges, the water heating location. It was challenging without a basement. There is some localized cooling that happens around an air source heat pump hot water heater like that. And it also makes noise. In this house in Conway, we used, Walt told you what brand, I forget now. But we're also looking at some newer models from A.O. Smith that said they had a 45 dB instead of around a 65 dB, which is what we're measuring decibel level. So looking at what is the noisiness of these equipment if we're putting it inside a living space, what's the duct layout for our ERVs and how does that contribute to noise in the living space? And then this ongoing conversation around homeowner education. Are you comfortable keeping your bedroom doors open so that that one mini split on the second floor can distribute heat to all the bedrooms? Do you understand that what's a normal range of temperatures or what's a normal range of an electric bill in a house like this? There's some things that homeowners can do, you know, shorter showers, less hot water, but some of it is also just what is the expectation you have. Do you expect it to be within 1 or 2 degrees in every room of the house, or are you comfortable with, say, setting your thermostat in the living room at 72 and having it be 68 to 70 in some of the further rooms? So we think that's one of our other major lessons learned, is that you have to work with your home buyers so that they understand what it is that they're buying. Next slide. I think that we might be ready to answer some questions. So I'm sure that Jamie and Walt will get back on here with me to field questions.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. So first off, just want to thank you all for that great content and for sharing your story with us and just pulling all this information together so that we can share with our audience that's out there today. Just really appreciate the effort that you guys put into that. Let's take a look at the questions. I know we were seeing it pretty quiet, but I do see a couple questions coming in. So first question, we used preformed foam window bucks on a renovation, which improved insulation around the window openings into the framing. Have any of you tried those preformed window bucks?
No, we haven't.
I've seen them on projects and had them, seen some success with them. Don't know that I haven't seen any projects where that made a huge impact. It's, you know, again, it's an added expense. It's sort of a specialty item. So maybe more suited for a custom home project.
Sure.
Yep.
Gotcha. Next question, upstairs, were there any jump ducts or transoms to allow for some air redistribution with closed doors in the bedrooms?
No.
The doors were undercut a little bit, but yeah, the idea is that with the improved building envelope, that the heating will distribute in the house rather than out the walls. And you know, some of the temperature data that we've looked at from the house shows that it does, I mean, that the north side bedroom was getting pretty chilly. So we had a maybe 5 degrees cooler than the set point in the hallway at times. But I think that occupant was also closing the door more often. So some people love to sleep in a cooler room and prefer a warmer living room. So this might be actually great for them. There's other people, you know, who might say, all right, well, I'd wish it was a little warmer in my bedroom, but I'd rather wear slippers and put on a sweater and have a lower heating bill. And then there's other people who are going to say, you know, I can't handle that difference. And for them, they might need to supplement with a space heater or something to reach that couple degrees difference, or electric blankets or something else to meet their comfort needs.
Great. Next question, have you considered using casement windows instead of double hung windows on these projects?
I'm a big advocate of that.
We've actually found a more efficient double hung window that we're testing out in our current build that we're building. And the difference in cost was not very significant. And fortunately, we've often got a very good discount from our supplier, Matthew Windows. So I think we are looking into more efficient windows in terms of primarily in terms of the air sealing.
Yeah, so we didn't, you know, you can actually look at the air infiltration rate on the window spec, not just the U value and the solar heat gain coefficient. So we did find a vinyl window that was a double hung, was slightly better One of the problems with casements for us, if we're not putting mini split heads in every room, if the homeowner wants to add a window air conditioner later or something, mostly people were satisfied with the cooling provided by 1 or 2 mini splits in the house, but it would be very difficult for them to do a window AC if they wanted to with a casement.
Am I also correct that in your next, I think that maybe some of the projects you're building now, you did eliminate 1 bedroom window, or did you stick with the same 2 windows in each bedroom?
But we've had 2 windows in all the bedrooms, and the homes are built.
Yeah.
Make it a little smaller, probably.
Okay.
And it is interesting too, the houses that we built in 2023 that didn't meet the air sealing standard, that we didn't quite get to 1 ACH 50 with, they did have casement windows. So that was not a magic solution for us.
Great, thanks. And sorry, I lost audio there for a second, but sounds like you had some good responses there. So next question, and Megan, this one might be for you. What kind of homeowner education did you do kind of post-occupancy? Was there literature or more of a class given on a relatively small scale to the future occupants?
Yeah, so all of our home buyers put in sweat equity and actually helped to construct their homes. So that's our first line of defense for education, is working alongside the volunteers. We also have a written homeowners manual that we provide to all our homeowners. We put that manual in a binder with all the manufacturers' guidebooks and warranty information so that they have that handy and ready. We're working right now on also creating a few short videos to supplement our written homeowners manual as a way to sort of give education in different formats.
Great, thank you. Could you guys elaborate on putting the drywall up for framing, like what that process was like, and just kind of elaborate on that a little bit more, that process?
Putting it up as a continuous ceiling, you're talking about?
Yeah, putting up the drywall as a continuous before framing the interior walls.
Right. So the real challenge in doing that is it makes it more difficult for the electrician to come and wire after the ceiling drywall is up. I mean, what we would like to do is basically put any ceiling boxes in the ceiling, and then put the drywall up as a continuous ceiling, and then the electrician to come back and put the wiring in. We did that on the house that the Conway house that we described. You also have to coordinate that a little bit with the inspectors so that they can inspect things that they feel that they need to inspect when they, it sort of changes the inspection a little bit. In a more recent house, then we're doing with a continuous ceiling, but we have to make it a little easier for the electrician, we've left off a couple of panels. We put up the boxes and put up most of the ceiling, but I've left off a couple of the panels, so it's a little easier for them to get up and do the initial wiring. Again, all the sort of the initial wiring has to be done before the interior walls go up, and then they have to go back up and basically drill holes through the ceiling into the interior walls and down into the side walls where they're going to put their boxes. So it's added to a little more of an expense for the electricians to do it that way, but at least we found some electricians willing to do it that way.
Great, thanks for elaborating on that. Did you consider a single dual zone mini split as opposed to the one-to-one systems that you chose to install on this system? And if not, why did you choose to go with the one-to-one setup for this project?
The feedback that we've gotten from our HVAC installers and other trainings is that the one-to-ones can operate most efficiently, where the turn down ratios and things like that are optimized, because if you have two heads off of one condenser outside, that condenser is going to be slightly oversized if only one of the heads is running on the inside. So you can just get a closer match between the indoor and outdoor equipment, and that's the most efficient way to do it. So if they don't need any heating or cooling on the second floor while they're running it on the first floor, or vice versa, then the other unit just is off and it doesn't have to be operating.
There's also an additional advantage in case there was a failure. Unlikely, but if in the middle of the winter, if one of the units failed, at least you've got a backup that maybe still keep the house built, livable, not freeze up.
Redundancy, right? That's one of our themes.
Let's see. Was there any talk of ducting the heat pump water heater for either intake or output, as opposed to your louvered door method?
Yes, I really wanted it ducted outside, but I lost that. I was shot down. It's a challenging thing, deducting it from that location where it was. So they were balancing both like performance and the location of it. It's under the stairs in the center of their house. So there's really no good exterior wall except if you went down under the stairs, but you can't see in the plans there. There's also other equipment. There's I think your water came in there, an expansion tank was in there. It would have exited. It would have been fine, I guess, but it was a little clunky. And then some people worry about depressurization in the house also, which another debate not to be had here about that. But I just want to go on record. I'm a proponent of it on these all electric houses without combustion equipment. I really think we need to start experimenting with it because it is a problem for your market rate customer. People do not want cold, loud machines next to their house. And so we found a way to work in some things, but if we're really going to make this a mainstream thing, we have to have other solutions. This isn't going to work across the board. For sure. I mean, even in some habitat houses, I think there's been issues with that.
Well, we also looked into the possibility of a split system where the compressor is outside, but we really haven't found any product that seems to be right yet for doing that in terms of the cost.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that maybe will come. In fact, at some point, if we could actually find a system that would do the heating, cooling of the house as well as the hot water as a unified unit or a system of units, I think that would be ideal.
And in one of our other Northampton projects, we did install a split heat pump hot water heater. It was a solar assisted heat pump hot water heater is what it was called. So it was quieter and it has the evaporator outside. It also cost, I think, probably almost twice as much as our single unit one. So we got some grants and we did that for one project, and we might consider it again in the future because we're in the first year of occupancy with that and have had I haven't heard anything about it, which to me is like good news. That basically means they just are getting their hot water and it's working well. But we want to see that go for another year or two before we decide if it's worth the investment for the extra cost.
Great, some really great points there, Jamie. Your opinion is duly noted here. Next question, kind of broad for the group. What recommendations or tips would you all make for a builder, developer, HERS rater who has a project that is pursuing the Mass Save All Electric Level 2 incentive, and they're getting close to the HERS 35 or to those requirements, but they're just not quite there. Any advice for those folks?
Well, I can speak to just to really note that when you get down to that level, you're that close, every detail really matters. So, in addition to insulation and HVAC equipment, appliances have a big impact, lighting, and then what I've found in my all electric projects is that we can generally come up with a set, at least a few different options for equipment and appliances that will work, and in insulation details. And then we're really just stressing about the blower door test results. And so that having those multiple tests installed, or scheduled is critical. And you can really, in choosing, a lot of people will cling to spray foam for exterior wall insulation details because they want to just, have an easy fix. And I'll just say that, that it's very possible to do without that. And so it's really about the air sealing details, and that air barrier design, and really thinking that through with your crew. I mean, those are the steps that make the difference there. And if you're just winging it and hoping, then you may be disappointed when you get to the end.
It's interesting you mentioned appliances, Jamie, because I forgot that was actually another policy change we made. Instead of doing like washer and dryer hookups, we made the policy that we were going to purchase all the appliances for our homeowners and sell it with the house, so that we could make energy efficient selections for those. And maybe that was only a point or two, but we were getting that close that a point or two mattered.
Yeah, and I mean, most homes are in that, the amount of homes that are under 35, there you would have better deep, stats on this, but from my own experience, it's very few. And especially smaller homes like this, you might get something with the same details. If it was 6,000 square feet, it's going to be a very different HERS index score.
And I think the 1-to-1 ratio on the minis, correct me if I'm wrong, but putting in the just 2 mini splits fares better in the HERS rating than, say, doing a ducted mini split.
Yeah, a ducted mini split probably wouldn't have worked on this. The efficiency ratings are just different enough where that can swing you a couple points. I don't remember if we even entertained that, but I can speak from other projects that doesn't always work.
Yeah, so our goal of looking for the simplest systems and just was part of this too.
Great, and I think you kind of touched on this, but and there was a slide earlier in the presentation that showed some of the other projects that you guys have in your pipeline or have worked on to try and replicate the process of the all-electric homes. So would you just kind of touch on how you're kind of using some of these lessons learned from the projects that met the requirement and kind of replicating that across your portfolio?
Well, we're building the same house over and over again where we can. That certainly helps. So, Walt is one of our 20 houses or something with us, which is great, because we do have a lot of volunteer turnover, but having some volunteer leaders like Walt helps a lot to carry things forward, and figuring out those plywood top plates and how to seal that to the drywall, and some of those details then become the standard. So wherever you can choose what your standard is going to be and then do that over and over again, I think is definitely helpful. But I think like the questions around the water heating, you know, that's something where we're still fine tuning. Like I said, we tried a different water heater in our next project. In the project under construction now, we're looking for one with a lower decibel rating for noise to help mitigate that concern, things like that.
And we're looking in possibly changing our ventilation system to not having a central unit, but having multiple in-wall units. I think the Cape Cod habitat has used some. So we're always looking for new technology, but we don't want to be the first one to try it. If we get some confirmation for others before we invest in it.
Great. Kind of related question on a material choice for the exterior sheathing. So was there a reason that you opted to use two separate products, OSB and 2-inch rigid, as opposed to a combined product like Zip-R, which combines the continuous insulation with the exterior sheathing?
I think it was a cost issue primarily. The other thing is that in the past, for many of our houses at the time, Dow was donating a rigid foam insulation, and we were able to get enough donated insulation to do the under slab and the exterior foam board. So we were sort of continuing in that model, even though Dow was no longer doing it through Habitat for Humanity. We're always looking for new possibilities, so we'll see if there's another way to do it. But I think our model of separating the air barrier and the vapor barrier probably still makes sense. Maybe Megan can talk to that a little more. But this is our approach anyhow going forward. Is we're not changing that right yet.
Yeah, I mean, having the sheathing where it is kind of a protected position because it's got enough warmth on the outside, so we don't have to worry about the sheathing being cold and getting condensation on it. I understand that some of those other products, the sheathing is on the exterior, but it's, you know, factory adhered to the insulation, so you don't have the issue of potentially condensation forming between them. But don't put the sheathing on the outside if you're just doing it yourself. Make sure that the sheathing stays warm. We also, you know, looking just at different options out there. You know, we've done a couple double stud wall houses because those have cellulose in them, but this rigid foam on the exterior seems like a really, it's become our norm, so it's easier for our volunteers to replicate. So that's the sort of that idea of finding what works for your team and then doing it over and over again. We've also experimented a little bit with recycled insulation, primarily reclaimed for under the slab, where minor imperfections are a little less important.
Great. Well, yeah, thanks again to our panelists, Megan, Walt, and Jamie, for their time and expertise here, sharing their story. This does bring us to the end of the webinar. There were a few questions. Quite a few questions came in towards the end. A few we didn't get to. I will try and pass those along to the panelists and get folks answers who did submit questions. If you do have any questions about the MassSafe program or about this webinar, certainly feel free to reach out to resnewconstructionma@icf.com, and we would be happy to address those. Thanks to everybody for joining. Thanks again to the panelists. Really great presentation, excellent content. I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.